It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Magical day to all. Welcome to Divas That Care Network. I am Joyce Banning, and I will be your host for this absolutely invigorating, robust lifestyle show. I would like to thank each one of our listeners who have tuned in live today and the ones that will be listening to this podcast on all the numerous different podcast platforms. I am so very grateful and thankful for each and every one of you. And you are all in for one very special show today, as I have with me my incredible returning diva, Deb Matlock. And her and I are going to chat about whispers of spring. Oh my, what a beautiful topic for the middle of May. And with that, Deb, would you please introduce yourself to our listeners today?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. I am Deb Matlock, coming to you from Colorado. A beautiful spring day in Colorado, touching on our topic. My work focuses around people's connection to the wild natural world and to animals and the world of spirit. And I have a small business called Wild Rhythms, and I do that work through trainings for other practitioners and workshops and retreats, and also some private spiritual nature-based coaching. So seasonal changes and talking about spring is really right up my alley. I'm really excited for this topic today.
Oh, Deb, yes, it is, because talking about you're a nature-based coach, oh my goodness, and that's just what we're going to talk about, is how the seasons and how nature and just the little whispers that you see, and to me, you can see the whispers, you can hear the whispers, you can even feel the whispers when it's this changing of the seasons and everything. So I am just really excited too. What first comes to your mind when you hear whispers of spring?
Yeah, when you mentioned this topic about a week ago, I thought, oh, that just feels so beautiful, and I could just feel it in my heart and in my bones. And then I've sort of been thinking about it this last week, and it's kind of come up in my mind in a couple of different, content areas or focus areas. One is the whispers of spring that we experience as beings, living in spring, and then the whispers of spring that we can observe through our senses and the world around us. I think spring, we often think of beautiful bursting flowers and birds and squirrels and animals getting, very busy and very active, and those are such beautiful parts of spring, and they're the loud parts. They're the parts that it's impossible, I think, to miss, which are beautiful, absolutely. I mean, walking the dogs and seeing all the flowers blooming all around the neighborhood is just soul lifting. But I love this idea of the whispers. What are the subtle things that we can sense or feel or hear or just even intuit that come with this beautiful and amazing season of splashes of color and animal activity and all of this rejuvenation around us?
Oh yes. There. It's almost like it awakens all of your senses, because there's so much if you just take that moment and realize what is all happening out there in nature, and just with the animals, with the trees, with the grasses, and like you said, the flowers. It is just everything. I have so noticed, and this was probably even almost a month ago when my dog and I walked down by the creek. It is the little tiny green, just grass blades and little weed blades even, and just how they're just popping up everywhere. And some of them have the most beautiful little wildflowers. We have these that have like a deep reddish purple is kind of what it almost is. It's like a burgundy color. And they are just beautiful. They open up in the morning and then they close up at night. And they're not very tall. And if it's in tall grass, you'd have to look for them. But they are just absolutely gorgeous. And those are those are one thing that come to my mind when I think of the whispers of spring. And the other one is the swallows. I call them barn swallows. They're the little tiny birds. They make mud nests, and they are just beautiful. And every spring they come back. They're gone through the winter months, but to me that is such a beautiful whisper, and their music is beautiful too. They're just whispering, spring is here, spring has sprung, we're here.
Oh yeah, we have swallows here in Colorado as well, and they're some of my favorites to watch because they're so community oriented, and they just work together, and it's such a beautiful reminder for us as humans about how we can function in the world and what we can do. And yeah, I love what you said about the little tiny burgundy wildflowers, and it makes me think of a story. A couple weeks ago, I saw one little violet, Johnny Jump Up, reseeded from last year, the first one that came up and bloomed. And we had snow, and it was cold, and my seedlings were in the kitchen on the table because it was too cold to be out in the little, it was Colorado spring. And this one little Johnny Jump Up, tiny little flower, and I thought, if I had blinked, I would have missed this flower, and it survived the snow, of course, these hardy little flowers. And then, there's these beautiful displays of tulips and irises also, which are just grandiose and incredible. And I took a bunch of photos yesterday of one of the neighbors' patches of irises. And they're so much easier to see. But these little tiny ones sometimes, to me that's like where the whisper is, like the little flowers you were describing down by the creek with your dog, or those little tiny Johnny Jump Up violet that I had in my garden that just kind of rogue, just said, I'm going to grow here. I didn't know that there was a seed going to grow in that one spot, but I'm sure it's not going to leave it there. And, there's these tiny little signs, these little whispers of hope and these little splashes of color that just brighten our lives, and sometimes I think it's like that, slowing down and looking for the deeper, smaller little whispers of spring, the little signs that'll be so easy to miss. It's so easy to miss.
Yes, they are so easy to miss, because if you're not noticing them, you just don't. They just kind of come and go. It's even like the leaves on the trees when they first pop out. I always see, oh my goodness. The trees are starting to bud, is what I call it, as they start to form their leaves. And it's just, to me, it's a hope that spring is so close. And what comes to my mind, too, is we have quite a few mulberry trees, and the little teeny tiny mulberries that start to come out. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, there come the mulberries again this year. And it's just noticing, taking the time. Those are the whispers to me, is seeing things as they just barely start to form, and then just watch what they grow into. And it is just magnificent. It's just magical to watch it happen.
Yeah, and I think that the idea you just brought up of taking the time, I know for myself, spring feels like a very frenetic time. There's just a lot of activity. There's a lot of things I want to do and need to do in the garden, and in the shed, and places where I'm not going to probably do that work over the winter. Most winters there's no garden to be found underneath the snow, and the plants are all dormant here in Colorado, and so I can feel the frenetic energy in my own body and in my own spirit, which is not a bad energy. But it does sometimes mean taking that extra moment, if I'm working in the garden and there's some little tiny, super tiny little insect crawling across the leaf, taking this little moment to spend time with that little being and say, wow, I don't know if you overwintered as an adult. I don't know if you just hatched. I don't know what your story is, but here you and I are sitting in this garden, and you're so small I can hardly even see you. And I'm so huge that you probably don't even know I'm here because I'm too much probably to take in, and maybe you can notice my finger or something. But here we are together, and this tiny little whisper of spring, because there sure as heck aren't these tiny little insects in winter, around here. And I wonder in summer, sometimes these little guys, they either metamorphosize into something else, or, they're early spring and their lives are short, and they don't stick around for very long. And so this cherished little moment of time with this tiny little whisper. And, slowing down, I think you really bring up a great point in a season that often asks us to speed up.
Yes. Oh, how true that is. And that was even like yesterday when you talked about the little bug there was a little nest of baby bunnies. And, oh, my goodness, well, the dog found them. He didn't harm them or anything, but we got them away from them. But I bet there were 6 little tiny bunnies all curled up in this little hole, and Mommy had taken grass and stuff and covered up the hole, and she was probably out hunting. But I'm like, oh, my, that is so precious of the new birth of springtime and how the mother is so nurturing all those little baby bunnies and taking care of them. And it was just, it just gave me such a good feeling to see them, and they were so tiny.
Yeah, and that's exactly some of those little hidden beauties. Like, how easy would it be to miss, or to see, oh, my dog's over there and my dog's interested in something, whatever, I'm not going to worry about it, and we miss stuff. Well, in that case, it could have, in the spring we need to, our dogs have other ideas, right? I've got a couple dogs that would love to find a nest of baby bunnies, and not for the reasons that I would like to find that. Right. But yeah, sometimes I feel like our connection with our companion animals is what guides us into deeper connection too. Like your dogs found those babies, and then you got to have that experience,
Right.
And I can't count the number of things my dogs have found for me over the years and all the seasons. But that some of them I'm like, oh, we don't want to find that. Let's move away from that, And others of them, it's been amazing. But all of it is stuff I would have missed most likely.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, true that is, because they, like my dog, her nose is to the ground the majority of the time when she's outside. So she's always intuitive of what's happening around her and what's down on the ground there. And she has seen things out at the creek just like that, and different things. One day we were out there, and all at once she started looking in the direction, and I looked that way, and there was a beautiful eagle flying up.
Oh.
I'm like, I would have missed it if I wouldn't have been watching and seeing where her attention went. And the animals don't miss the things like us humans have a tendency to do, I always feel, because they're so connected. And so alert of what's happening around them at all times.
Boy, that is the truth, and for them, I wonder how many of these things that we would consider to be whispers of spring, they might, my dog might say, that's not a whisper, that's pretty obvious, like, well, maybe to you with incredible hearing and a nose that goes on forever, and, yeah, I think that's a really good point, and it's a beautiful way for us to companion with our animals, too, is to what are they noticing and what are they experiencing that we might not be. And, I feel like that's also true of the wild animals around us. When the birds make a different sound and suddenly their one kind of rhythm goes to another, maybe more alarm-sounding rhythm, that's my clue to start looking around. What is it that they're noticing? Is it me? Or is it something else that I would like to be aware of and witness myself?
Right. Oh, yes, definitely. And the other thing, like with our animals, I think of my horses, because I always know when they start to shed that winter coat, spring is here. And it's like nobody tells them what the month is. Nobody gives them and says, okay, now's the time you can shed off that. And how beautiful. They just do it naturally. It's just something they know to do. And to me, it's kind of a little miracle. And it's like it's saying, spring is here now. We don't need this coat anymore. We're going to get rid of it. Off it comes.
Oh, that's a perfect example of a whisper of spring. Because yeah, I don't have a shed season personally that I notice when spring starts, at least not that I'm aware of. Uh-huh. But I sure notice it on my animals. Little tufts of fur starting to show up on my dogs, that tell me I need to brush them and have more baths and, whatever it is. And again, it's not a part of spring that's a beautiful bub coming out of the ground or something, but it is definitely a whisper, and it is a harbinger of those rhythmic changes that the seasons bring to us. And when we live closely with our animals and we pay attention to these sorts of things, it's like we can just deepen our engagement one level more than maybe if we were just only focusing as humans.
Right. Oh, yes, because the animals, boys say the animals are some of the best teachers, because they can teach us so much if we just take the time to watch what they're doing and just watch their senses and watch how they react to things. And it's beautiful. And we have quite a few coyotes at night that they just start howling, and my dog is just, oh my, she's out there just howling back to them, and she's like, okay, I hear you, and I'm sure they hear her.
Right. Yeah, and that is one of the most wild, I mean, the coyote howling at night sound is just, it stirs me so deeply, and it is one of my all-time favorites. And I know that oftentimes it means that somebody else is being dinner, but I get how it all works out there, and yet it's still just, I don't even know that I have the right words to describe, and it does sound different in different seasons, so that's a great point. It's like, here in Colorado, the coyotes are here year-round. They don't leave. They might move around and their behavior changes a little bit, but, they're here all year. But their sounds are different. It's another piece of that whisper of spring. The way that they vocalize is, I think a little more active in these warmer months for sure. There's more of it at night than when they're probably hunkered down in their dens in the winter. When it gets dark at 4:30 and the snow is blowing everywhere. It's definitely, that's a beautiful example of another whisper.
Yeah, they just they're more active because, like you said, they're not having to hunker down to keep warm. They're more active and out and around, and it is. And it's so, somebody said, well, how can you tell the difference from that and the dog? And I said, it's totally different.
Totally.
It's a totally different sound than what the dogs make. Even when my little girl howls, I mean, it's not the same howl as what you'll hear from them coyotes. And it's another whisper that spring is here.
Yeah, and that reminds me of one of the thoughts I was having about the whispers of spring was the patterns. Whether it's the light filtering, the light and shadow changes with each season are so dramatic and so easy to miss. But it's like even just more leaves on trees creates a different speckling of shadows on the ground than when there's not leaves on the trees, and it's very subtle and it's so beautiful, and we can get so easily caught into, well, that tree's always there, but stopping to look at things like the speckles and the shadows and the feeling of the breeze that changes as it moves through more plant foliage than we maybe winter has. Like it's just every little subtle sensory awareness that we have as humans, whether or not we have all of them, the ones we do have, can really respond to these subtle seasonal changes. And, it's so incredible.
Oh, it is. And you talk about the trees. I'm just looking out my window now, and when the leaves are on the trees, so much more shade when you look at the ground, and there's so much more shaded areas than what there is when there's no leaves on the trees in the wintertime. So it's another, just like it's a whisper. I will give you the shade if you will just take the time to notice the shade and feel that shade underneath me. And so, that's what came to my mind when you were talking about the leaves on the trees.
Yeah, and I think it's so fun to sort of watch how does that impact us, the different light, longer days of light depending on where, we are. I know here in Colorado, in our deepest winter days, we're getting dark at 4:30 in the afternoon, and now as we're heading into summer solstice, one more month away, it's so light, it's 7:30 at night, and we're still, and it's going to be even lighter a month from now, and but I can notice as I live in an area where there's a lot of cattle and a lot of beautiful rolling, ranches of just open land with lots of wildlife, and what I notice as I drive by that, as the days get warmer and the sun, the cows start to conglomerate under the groups of trees, and the cow patterns on the pastures, the rhythm of the cows as they interact with their land is different. Whereas in the winter they tend to be a little more spread out, I guess, because there's not really a need for shade, and they're not too hot. But it's just so interesting to watch the dispersed cow from move into these little groups that are, and then it's like you can see where the water and the trees are on the landscape, and they know their land. I mean, they live there, they know exactly what they're doing, and they know where they want their babies to be, and it's just so fun to just watch these patterns change. And it's just wildlife and domestic animals and our companion animals, they all know this, and they all live it.
Oh, yeah. They all know. I feel they know the season changes probably better than we really do. They adapt to them so quickly, and just like my little girl, she loves being out when it's nice and cool in the spring and just frolicking in the green grass and rolling in it and just really having fun. And when the rain is another thing I think about in spring. If you stop and listen to the pitter-patter of the rain, as they say it, I don't know if it's pitter-patter, but as the raindrops fall, sometimes I like to just go out when it's just lightly raining and just kind of be in it, just absorb it, because it's beautiful. It's just and it always amazes me how much greener everything is, how much more the flowers are brighter, and the garden grows so much after a rain. You can water, but when you get that rain, oh my goodness, you look at everything and you go, wow, that grew overnight.
Boy, isn't that the truth? I can completely relate to that, where I think, good grief, this has only been 24 hours, and I'm now standing out here, and there's all of this is happening that wasn't happening yesterday at this time. And, the same goes with the sun. Like, I had to bring in all of my little seedlings for a couple of weeks, actually, because we got really cold here about 3 weeks ago, and so I sacrificed my kitchen table, and it became a seedling nursery for pallets of... and they lived and they grew a little bit, and as soon as it warmed up enough that I could take them back outside, and they could be out in the sun and in the natural light and breeze and a little bit of rain here and there, oh my goodness, they took off.
Yeah.
And I may have to bring them in again one night this week. We'll see how cold it gets at night, and I thought, I feel bad taking them inside because, they're just flourishing, and what I couldn't give them indoors. All I could do indoors was keep them alive. Which was good because they would have probably frozen to death. But I couldn't do the same thing, no matter how much I loved on them.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? And I think even just the fresh air, the air outside is what they need to nourish them and grow. Because I had some plants too that I was bringing in and out, and they came from a greenhouse. And she said, "Be sure you take them out slowly so they can adapt, because they're not used to the outside air." And oh my, I did that for almost 2 weeks, and now they're just flourishing. I put them in the garden, and oh my, they're beautiful. It's like, this is just what we needed, was all of this. And it's amazing what just the air and the environment, how it helps things grow like that.
Oh my gosh, and to me that's there's so much we can learn from that one concept, because we are so much like the plants we're trying to nourish into our gardens, right? We need we're so much like all the animals that are the squirrels are active earlier and they're active later, and they're much more vigorously running around, and we're part of all that. And so I know that I get really edgy if I'm inside too much. I mean, I get really grouchy. I feel badly for those around me that have to deal with me if I've been stuck at my computer for too long, because it isn't, it's not my best side, But if I go sit outside in the sun, even for a few minutes, and I feel the breeze, it's like the little plant. I can just feel myself relaxing, but opening up and expanding, and just feeling a little more alive and a little more just vibrant. And it doesn't even take that long, I've noticed. I mean, a long time is great. But it doesn't even take that long to start feeling a shift.
No. Oh, I so agree with you. I'm the same way. I mean, I got to get out, because it's like it re-energizes me. It recharges me. My energy is back. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, I feel so much better now that I came outside and spending time out in nature and just absorbing everything that's around me and listening to those whispers that are all around me, and the trees and the breeze, and just feeling it and soaking it all in. And it's amazing for myself how much it revitalizes me.
Yeah, I think that's such a thing for all of us to remember, as we're whether we're in the northern hemisphere and we're in spring, or we're in the southern hemisphere and we're in our fall, what is it that our heart and soul need us to do so that we can connect to the whispers of the season, and so that we can feel like we're part of it, and also so we don't miss it, because it's an incredible show. It's an absolutely incredible. Those little burgundy wildflowers down by your creek that you were talking about, what an incredible show. And there's only a moment of time, I'm sure, that they bloom each year. And so, soaking up the beauty of that sacredness, of those incredible dynamic rhythms that just make life on the earth so vivid and so inspiring. And if our goal could be just to, every day to say, what's one whisper of the season that maybe I would have missed had I not taken a moment to slow down and look for it, or sense it, or feel it somehow.
Oh, yes. Oh, I love that. I love soaking up the beauty of the rhythms. And, oh, how true that is. Oh, wow. Deb, I think you and I could just talk and talk, chat and chat about all of the whispers of nature out there. And I cannot believe how fast this show has gone once again, and that it's almost coming to a close. I'm like, oh, my goodness, this went way too quick. We barely got just a few things mentioned, and there's so much more. But this will give, to me, I feel this plants a seed for our listeners to start to look around and realize all of the beauty that is out there and the rhythm of it all. So with that, would you please share with our listeners today how they can best connect with you, Deb?
Absolutely. You're welcome to check out my website at wild-rhythms.com, and I would love to connect with you there. You can sign up for my email newsletter, which is not over the top, usually somewhere between 2 and 4 times a month usually. I also have a Facebook group, if you're on the Facebook platform, Sacred Connection, Earth, Animals, and Spirit, where I just like to share inspiring, hopeful messages and articles and things that get us, more connected and more enchanted with all of the amazing life around us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Deb. And yes, her Sacred Connections Facebook page is beautiful. You need to take a look, and it'll also help you to realize what Deb is seeing, too, and how she is helping others to come with that connection. So thank you so much, Deb. That was beautiful.
Oh, and thank you again for having me on. It's always a joy to chat with you. I look forward to our conversations.
Oh, well, that makes 2 of us, definitely, because I love it. And I'm going to wish you magic in each and every day till you and I chat again on Robust Lifestyles in the month of June.
Wonderful. Yes, and to you as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Deb. And with that, I want to thank all of our listeners for listening to this absolutely invigorating and awakening of spring show with our incredible diva, Deb Matlock. Please share the show with your family and friends. Check out all the other hosts and their shows on divasthatcare.com. And remember, some of the tidbits and some of the golden nuggets that Deb left with us. What does our heart need? And just kind of go into your heart space and enjoy the beauty that surrounds us. And each and every day, take just a few moments and find that one whisper of each season and soak up the beauty of the rhythms in that season. And you will be amazed how much it will recharge your body. For myself, it's incredible. So with that, I want to wish each of you a very magical day. Remember, be kind to all, including your animals. Give your animals that great big extra hug and share all your love with them as they so deserve it. Until we connect again on Robust Lifestyles, stay strong and healthy.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.